Hello, dear colleagues, dear teachers. Let me introduce myself. I am an English teacher at Nazarbayev Intellectual School in Semey City, Наварян Ольga Владиславовна. And today I am given the task to present our findings, our ideas, how to organize formative assessment effectively and successfully. And we are given the topic traveling. In my presentation, I'm not going to show any students' assessment sheets, any students' worksheets, any students' results. My task, my aim is to present as many as possible different, interesting, engaging tasks for formative assessment, how to make success criteria, and what is the difference between rubrics or success criteria. So, I'm going to look at the process of assessing the students. So, let's start. The objectives for this seminar are: we are going to revise successful keys for a good formative assessment. We are going to observe Bloom's taxonomy, which is used in preparing formative assessment tasks. Of course, we are going to touch the question, what is the difference between rubrics and success criteria. And of course, you will be presented with different techniques for formative assessment in class and with the topic traveling. Firstly, I want to start with such interesting activity as Think, Pair, Share. It is very commonly used nowadays at our schools because it is useful for the beginning of the topic. So my question is to you, not to the students. What are 5 successful keys for formative assessment? Any ideas are possible. And if you can see here a train, and what will be the steamer, and what will be the carriages here. If you have any ideas, let's discuss. So, these are 5 successful keys. Firstly, together with your students, you should discuss learning goals for this exact class. These should be based around the learning outcomes rather than the tasks. And teachers should also identify what English language will be introduced across these learning goals. Secondly, clarify the target. What does it mean? It means that you, a teacher, needs to help students to recognize how can you achieve these objectives, these learning objectives. What success criteria are, and of course explain these learning objectives in a more simple language. What is for the second carriage? Use sound design. What does it mean? That means that you as a teacher should provide students with some visual assessment. It can be worksheets, it can be different templates or something other. The third carriage, your students need to be engaged, should to be engaged in your lesson. That means that you need to provide them with very interesting, engaging tasks and activities. And of course, do not forget that the most useful part, the most beneficial for students, it is your effective and time feedback. The word explicit here means that you give your feedback in time exactly at the same lesson. You can use visuals or different models, and it will help. Exactly, it will help learners to understand the next steps in their learning. The next very interesting activity is called Define, Describe, and Explain. You also can use it in the beginning of the topic, but in our presentation it is like a warm-up. And your task now is to tell what is the difference between success criteria and rubrics. So firstly, define success criteria and define rubrics. Then describe when we use success criteria, when we use rubrics. And of course, explain how success criteria work and how rubrics work in the assessment. If you are ready, I will show you this slide, which will help us to understand what is the difference between success criteria and rubrics. The term success criteria was coined in the United Kingdom, and it is synonymous with assessment criteria, but instead of reminding students of their maybe negative experience of being assessed, this term focuses much more positively on students' ability to succeed. Sometimes the success criteria might be just a series of dot points. For lengthy assessment tasks, for given explicit feedback, teachers often use rubrics, which will provide students with the success criteria and also with the description of a number of different levels of performance in relation to these success criteria. The difference between success criteria and rubrics are also very important, and a lot of teachers as well as students mix them or use or misuse them. When making assessment sheets, you should not forget about Bloom's taxonomy cognitive objectives. What does it mean? This slide will help you with a special number of verbs which you can use when you make up your assessment sheets or success criteria. For knowledge or remembering, you can use define, list, memorize, recall. For simple comprehension or understanding, the verbs will be classify, explain, review. For application, the verbs will be apply, demonstrate, illustrate. For analysis, infer, differentiate, examine. For synthesis, construct, create, design, develop. And for evaluation, appraise, assess, judge, or defend. And now we go to our topic, formative assessment, and the topic traveling. And of course, every teacher should understand the difference between language with content or content with language. Each teacher should identify that during this topic, he or she should check listening, reading, writing, and speaking skills. And of course, it is very, very important that he or she starts from objectives, then goes to success criteria, to the task, to the assessment sheet, and of course, feedback. Let's imagine that for the topic traveling, we will choose 5 listening objectives, 3 speaking objectives, 3 reading objectives, and 3 writing objectives. And let's examine how they will work in our topic, traveling. Let's imagine for the beginning of the topic, in the 12th grade, I'm going to introduce this topic with 2 objectives, S for speaking and W for writing. I'm not going to read the objectives. I'm going to start, but of course I will tell these objectives to the students in the beginning of the lesson. I'm going to present to my students task. Design a concept map on the topic traveling and the time in pairs. And as success criteria, I did. Invent a map with clear thoughts and the content relating to the concept. Develop as many hierarchical connections as possible. Illustrate examples and reasons while presenting it to the classmates. And construct your concept map creatively using different colors, lines, and directions. Please pay attention at number 2, success criteria. It's very, very important when I will evaluate my students, or they will evaluate each work in pairs. Develop as many hierarchical connections as possible. For this task, it is very important to give a reasonable timing. So I will write, you have 10 minutes to create a concept map on the topic transport of the past, the present and the future, and present it to the class in a creative way. I think that for the 12th grade students, it's very, very important to understand the concept of the topic. So again, success criteria are made according to the Bloom's taxonomy: invent, develop, illustrate, and construct. For this task is rather difficult. That's why I decided to give rubrics for my students. And in these rubrics for concept mapping, we have concept, then hierarchical structure, graphics, and map is presented in a professional and organized manner. You may ask me, why for to be achieved? A student needs to score 7 up to 9 out of 12 possible. Nothing is perfect and nobody is perfect. That's why I think that it's very difficult for a student to achieve 12 out of 12. And do not forget that each time we speak about the area for improvement. So to have the most score, a student should be very clear, should show clear thoughts to pattern, should show multiple levels with connections across all the levels of hierarchy. Color, he or she used color to differentiate levels or topics and show flawless presentation within the group. Of course, it's up to you. You may invent your own success rubrics. Then maybe I will choose listening and speaking for the second part of the lesson, or maybe for the second lesson on this topic. And it's very important that group sometimes can assess some tasks. For next task, I have chosen listening objective L5 and speaking objective L6. And for these exact objectives, this task is very possible. You will get to know your classmate better by asking him or her several questions on topic what direction a person can travel to. Write your questions in the box before interview your partner. For this task, success criteria will be: do not ask any personal questions, write down the answers, discover unusual and creative ideas, and use the questions, only the questions, why and how. Let's have a look at the worksheet. This is the phase of our interviewing task. So the task was what direction a person can travel to, and each interviewer should write 10 questions. Firstly, invent 10 questions, write them down, and then to ask these questions to 3 different people. Do not forget about success criteria, which will help you to evaluate and give reasonable feedback. For group assessment, you should use such evaluation sheet as you can see on this slide. I've decided to put dots as asked all the question in a good manner, with clear pronunciation, asked interesting and suitable questions, without any personal interference, asked high-order questions, wrote down the answers with proper vocabulary, and give the listener or the listeners time to reply. The next task, which is suitable, it's writing. And for this assessment, I have chosen self-assessment. And I have chosen objectives Y3 and Y4. Write with grammatical accuracy and communicate with clarity and precision. Of course, it's the 12 grades, and I've decided to choose such task. List 5 things about traveling. Success criteria for this task are the following. You should answer all the tasks. You should write at least 3 sentences to answer each question. Your purpose and opinion is clearly stated, and your ideas and examples are relevant to the reason. Here our worksheet, students' worksheet, and they are going to assess themselves. So here you can see a very interesting task. List 5 reasons why people travel. Think about unusual dimension. Again, I want to say that the 12th graders, they need to think more deeply, and they should understand that people can travel not only from town to town, from country to country. We should think about traveling into space or in time, example. List 5 different things which are necessary while you're traveling, and list 5 places in Kazakhstan which have historical significance and will be interested to foreign tourists, and of course explain why. For the next writing task, maybe in 2 or 3 lessons, I advise you to use strategy which is very popular in foreign schools. It's strategy PEAL. And I decided to use this PEAL strategy in creating inspirational travel brochure. What is PEAL strategy? As you look at the slide, you can understand that the first P, it is stating the point, E, it's showing the evidence, then give explanation, and L, it is link. The number of different phrases can help students to understand how they connect ideas within one paragraph. So the task for this writing task was also for 12th grade students, and they were given the task to create travel brochures. I have chosen 3 writing objectives: write with grammatical accuracy, communicate with clarity and precision, and develop independently coherent arguments. For success criteria, you can see here the following. Design a 3-page folded brochure. Write at least 100-150 words without spelling mistakes. Use at least 3 or 4 notional adjectives, and develop the content according to the PIL strategy. For assessment, this inspirational travel brochure, I have made such rubrics: judging attractiveness, vocabulary, accuracy, and spelling. And again, you may ask me a question: why 10 up to 12 out of 14 possible? And again, each student should have some area for improvement. Another interesting writing task, but it's not maybe suitable for the 12th grade students. That's why I have chosen writing objective from the 8th grade. 2 truths and a tale. Each student should write about 2 real places you have been, write about a place you have never been, and you should make the class believe that you have been there. And for objectives, it is use some support style and register appropriate to a limited variety of written genres. Success criteria are: write at least 150 words, present your position clearly, support it with examples and evidence, and of course show good vocabulary, good style, voice, and which is appropriate for the topic. Here is the task. It may look like this. And do not forget about success criteria. You can also give the students the chance to assess by themselves, or like a peer assessment. Now we are going to discuss some reading activities. For 12th grade students, I have chosen the text, it's rather long, about transport of the future, about high-speed trains from Japan. And before starting reading, I introduced the objectives to my students, and then I gave them the task. Read the text and do the activities. You should have 5 minutes for a pre-reading task and 5 minutes to fill in the graphic organizers. 5 minutes for pre-reading task. And I suggest for a pre-reading task, you use strategy, which is very famous acronym, THIEVES. Teach students still some useful information from title, headings, introduction, every first sentence, visuals or maybe vocabulary, end of the chapter questions, summary before reading the entire text selection. Try this strategy and it really works. And for the next 5 minutes, I suggested my students to use graphic organizers. It's very famous fishbone, but you can use it like organizing of ideas. In the middle you can see the name of the text, and on the bones, pros and cons of using maglev high-speed train. Another possible graphic organizer, it is T-organizer, T-chart. And again, use the name of the topic and ask students to fill in with pros and cons, and you will see the results. When students organize their ideas in different ways, they memorize the ideas and numbers more quickly and effectively. For reading activity in the 8th grade, you can choose such reading objective as read a growing range of extended fiction and non-fiction texts on familiar and some unfamiliar general and curriculum topics. And for success criteria, you should answer all 7 questions. Here is an example about traveling around Kazakhstan. And this is worksheet for this task. So you see that it's open questions, yes? And each student should have their own and only their own answer. And it will be a best way to provide a sound feedback to the students. Now let's discuss some listening activities which you can use within this topic. For the next activity, I have chosen L6 and L5, deduce meaning from the context and understand speaker's viewpoint. Students are going to listen to a conversation, and while listening conversation, let them choose between a great number of cities according to the speakers, what towns and what places they decided to visit. Or, for example, listen to the same conversation and answer the questions. Students should write in written form, of course, fill this worksheet. Another possible way for doing listening activity and assessment, look at this slide, please. I want to pay your attention at success criteria. Listen and complete the notes. Write no more than 3 words or a number for each answer, as usual. Exchange the papers with your partner and discuss the answers. Assess your partner with your own success criteria. Sometimes it is very, very useful. Let the students create their own success criteria. Then tell your teacher and explain your choice. Let's discuss some speaking activities which you can use. This activity is always very interesting and engaging because firstly you need to print a number of pictures and double them. Each student chooses one picture, finds a partner who has chosen another picture, and compare the pictures. They need to talk about where the people are, how people feel, why they are traveling, and how you like to travel. For success criteria, it's also the task maybe for the 8th grade. I've made it as for the 8th grade student. Use formal and informal registers in talk and use appropriate subject-specific vocabulary. And for success criteria, I answered all the questions, I used a good choice of vocabulary, and I did not make long pauses while speaking. Just with the same pictures, you can invent another task. Imagine that you are going on a long air or rail or road journey with your family, with your friends. What things would you take with you to make the time pass more quickly? Think about different types of journeys and holidays with different people. And of course, students can assess each other, or maybe in group, or maybe in pairs, like you want. This activity is also maybe for the beginning of the topic or maybe for the ending of the topic. Find someone who, and children usually like it very much. For objectives for this activity, S1 and S7, and it is more useful for 8th grade students rather than for 12th grade students. For success criteria, speak with and identify at least 6 people who have done at least one item on the list. You can see here some suggestions. Match each classmate, you cannot repeat the name, you must speak in English, and ask them questions to find the answer. And for final stage of the topic, I suggest you to write a diamond poem online. For this writing, for this diamond poem, you can use this link, and you can find some example. Firstly, what is a diamond poem? Yes. Then some examples, synonymic or synonym poem or antonym poem, and suggest students to write their own diamond poem on the topic traveling. Here they should write topic, then 2 adjectives, then 3 verbs, 4-word phrase, then again 3 verbs and again 2 adjectives, and renaming the noun. If you liked my ideas for making different or using these activities or these strategies at your lessons, you can use these links which can help you. And let's again recapping all what we did during this hour today. We revised successful keys for formative assessment. We observed Bloom's taxonomy in my formative assessment task. We revised some difference between rubrics and success criteria, and we identified different techniques for formative assessment with the topic traveling. This is the end, and thank you for attention.